Welcome to the Fight for Freedom podcast. Today, we're bringing together two teams working on the front lines of disaster response in Ukraine. Kazakh Rescue trains and deploys specialized first responders to war zones and hard-to-reach areas. Fight for Freedom Ukraine focuses on raising leaders who rebuild communities long after the war. In this conversation, David and Oksana share how short-term deployments can empower long-term change.
So, Kazakh Rescue started probably, I want to say, about 7 years ago. It was before I got involved with it. And there was a young man who his name was Sean, and he was actually helping as a volunteer in Iraq during the war there. And he was doing a lot just like aid work and trying to help people that were living in areas that were really impacted by the war there. And he just had a number of experiences while he was there that because he didn't have any sort of a professional background as a first responder or a medical worker or anything like that, where he saw a need, he really wanted to help. There was nobody else helping, and he wanted to get in and do something, but the military stopped him and said, you don't have the qualifications to be here. We don't want you to get hurt, so sorry. You have good intentions, but go away. And out of that, this idea was kind of born that there needs to be a better organization that exists to be able to send like highly trained teams of first responders into war zones and into disaster areas, other high risk areas, um, in order to meet the needs of the people that are living in these places. Because, a lot of people don't, when they think about war, like for me, before I experienced war for the first time, my only concept of war was what I saw in movies. And in the movies, it's just usually soldiers running around and shooting at each other. But you don't think about the fact that there are thousands and thousands of people living in the middle of all of that. And those people like often are really lacking in resources. They're lacking in access to basic things like food, water, clothing, shelter, medical care, and things like that. Zach's dream was to then go take that stuff that's sitting an hour away and bring it that last, few miles and get it to that person that's right there in the place where the bullets are flying over their heads, where the drones are coming in, and to give them whatever it is that they need in those situations. And so I actually, even though I became a part of the leadership team in Kazakh of their operations side, I started doing those kind of things before I even heard about Kazakh. I'd lived in Ukraine for a number of years and worked with another organization. We were doing development projects, educational projects, things like that. And then the war started. I happened to be back in the U.S. and I have a background as an advanced emergency medical technician and a first aid instructor. And so when the war started, I was just like shocked. I got all these messages from friends from where we used to live in southern Ukraine, just sharing, pray for us, we're all going to die. I could hear explosions in the background. One of my friends was down in a basement. He asked for prayers because there was a tank battle happening in his yard. Like there was a Ukrainian tank parked on the, right in front of his house, shooting across the river at Russian tanks. And the shells from the Russian tanks were flying in and hitting, his house, his neighbor's house, and he was down in the basement. And as all of these things were happening, I was just like, God, I don't know what to do. How do I help with all of this? What can I even do? And I looked over at my bookshelf, and I had a Bible sitting there, and so I just took my Bible and I opened it up, and I was just like, God, I need wisdom. What am I supposed to do? And it was February 24th, and so I opened up to the book of Proverbs chapter 24. And it says, if your strength fails in the day of adversity, then your strength was too small. Rescue those that are dying. Hold back those that are staggering to their death. If you say, I didn't know, God sees you, and he knows that you knew, and he will repay you according to your deeds. And I read that, and I realized I have to go hold people back from their death. God chose for me to be somebody that had a background in, I had a lot of connections with Ukraine. I speak the language, and I had a medical background in emergency work. And so I was like, okay, what do you want me to do? Just open the door. And so then for the next few years, I just pray for God to show me what to do next. And doors would open for me to join a medical team, and I traveled along the front lines doing medical work, and then I started doing more first aid instruction because I realized I could only do so much. I was only here for a period of time or in any given location just for a short period of time. And yeah, I could help some people, but then there was the people that were stuck living there. And I just started to think, like, what could I do to empower these people to help themselves? And so that's really where a lot of the first aid training started to come in. And it was while I was in the middle of doing that that I was connected with Kazakh Rescue. And so, as I kind of entered into working with them, they already had been doing some work in Ukraine. They'd sent teams to Kharkiv and to Kherson and other areas along the front lines, and so it was just kind of a natural fit. And as they had a desire to keep helping, and I had a huge desire just to come back and to keep helping, and so yeah, for almost 4 years now, I've just been doing back and forth, and for the last 9 months, that's been with Kazakh.
So we as the Fight for Freedom Ukraine team, we very focus on development of leadership because we live in the country where is the war, and we understand the consequences of this war will be for many generations. And to respond for all needs, we need to have a lot of leaders. And this is our focus. All projects that we do, we always pay attention how to develop skills, how to develop experience, and how to multiply leaders.
It excites me to hear that because actually leadership is a big part of what we care about in Kazakh. We see when we go into war zones and disaster areas that things just they fall apart into chaos. And normal structures that normally would help to lead society, lead families, lead businesses, they fall apart because people get displaced, things get destroyed, resources aren't available, and it becomes chaotic and sometimes lawless. Like the trainings that we do, we're also trying to empower local people to step up as leaders and giving them skills and knowledge and ability to help organize that chaos back into something that resembles normalcy again.
For us, the best way how we can develop leaders, how we can lead them, first is our own example, because they can see and they can do. So we can, when we start some projects, they join us, and then we give them chance to do this, and we just ask questions. We just motivate them to think wider, to think out of the box, and just to see what is the best solution for this context, what is the best solution for this situation, what they plan to do with that. And we always have a lot of discussions, and we teach them how to work it as a team.
Like the American Lead Program, which is a shorter class. So this trip, the main focus of what we're doing is we're teaching first aid classes, specifically kind of modeled after like the American Stop the Bleed program, which is a shorter class, as the name suggests, kind of teaching people how to stop bleeding. But on top of that, we're also taking more advanced tactical training and bringing that into it using what's called the March algorithm, which is something that NATO and the United States military have developed just kind of to help to stop death in war. And so we've been going around and teaching these classes, which in the US, if I were to teach these classes, I might be, teaching like law enforcement or these are the kind of classes that maybe military would go through. But a lot of my classes here, I'm teaching mothers, I'm teaching teenagers, I'm teaching, grandmothers and grandfathers. And when you talk about trauma, uh, what leads to someone being really psychologically traumatized and falling apart, panicking, just contributing to the chaos is when they have no idea what to do.
In these 2 last weeks, we had 4 trainings with your team. It was great experience for our teams and in the centers in Irpin, in Kharkiv, and we saw how it helps for our volunteers, for our people, for Ukrainians, even for our team, for everyone to have these knowledges, to have this experience, even to practice for like imitated wounds. But I think the fact that they tried how to stop the blood, how to put the tourniquet, it's like basic things that everyone in Ukraine should know for now, because this is our daily life, and we never know what will happen in next minute. And sometimes these basic skills can help and can save people's life. And we can help for ourselves, and we can help for many people. And I see how participants of the trainings, they were really involved in that, and they were very thankful. And I even remember one example from Kharkiv. And one woman, she said, if I would know this information a few months ago, I would save one life. What happened? She was going in the public bus, and in that moment, the bus was attacked by Shahed. And one woman, she was wounded in her neck. And she was in chaos, and she didn't know what to do. She tried. She just put her jacket on the neck, and she tried to stop the blood. But when ambulance arrived, that woman already died. And this is what she said, if I would have this information before, if I would know this. So we always think, okay, there's doctors, there is nurse, I have nothing to do that, I'm not professional in that, this is not my part, like I'm not in this. But this is the country where we have war. And it can happen that you're only person who can be around to wound person. And I think it's very important what you do, even if you come for a short period, even if you come for 1 week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks. And I know I heard already from you that in these 4 weeks you already train almost 500 people. So you left these knowledges, you left these skills with 500 people.
And that reminds me of actually one of the reasons why I started to focus more and more on teaching first aid instead of just doing medical care with clinics. The first trip I took into Ukraine, I went with a friend of mine, and he had a background in security and safety, and was trying to teach Ukrainian volunteers things like war zone safety and how to drive, in a can't remember the English word, colon. Convoy, thank you. How to drive in a convoy, and then he asked me to help teach first aid and all of this. And we went into Chernihiv right after it got liberated. And I just remember coming into the city, and there was still, there's burned out, tanks and things all along the road, and none of the mess had been cleaned up. There were still buildings that were crumbled, and the bricks were all out into the streets, and you had to drive around it all. And I mean, everybody, it was like people were starting to wake up from a nightmare. People were kind of out on the streets, and they just had this, they were pale, and they had this look on their face like they didn't understand what was going on. And so we went and we taught a group of volunteers, and then one of our contacts shared with a friend what we were doing. His name was Misha, and Misha said, hey, can you teach me first aid? I really want to know first aid. And I said, well, we have just a little time, like I have a lunch break, I have like maybe an hour and a half, but we could sit somewhere, and while I eat some lunch, I can teach you as much as I can. And then we had other trainings we were going to go do elsewhere. And so I went and met with him at a cafe in the back of this cafe, and he brought maybe five or six of his friends, and I just taught them the basics of using tourniquets and stopping the bleed, with wound packing, and how to recognize an arterial bleed, and just as much as I could fit into that short amount of time. And then we went and did the other trainings, and then before we left the area, Misha invited us back over to his house. And we sat down, and we were just spending some time talking with him, and he looked at me and he said, I was going to kill myself, and then you came, and it brought me hope.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't even know what to think, to realize that this man, after all that he had been through, living through that occupation and the shelling and the fighting and all of that, He was ready to kill himself just to get away from it all. But suddenly realizing he wasn't hopeless changed everything for him. And then we left, and maybe 4 or 5 days later, I got a message from one of our other contacts there that knew Misha, and a rocket had hit a park while he was walking through the park. And a piece of shrapnel flew off that rocket and hit a 2-year-old boy in the neck. And Misha was right there, and he had the IFAC that we gave him, and he had just gone through the training, and he ran over, and he was able to stop the arterial bleed in the child's neck and hold pressure on that until a couple of military medics came over and took over, and they were able to save the child's life.
Yeah, and this 1.5 minutes in his hand was whole life of this child or this kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know the person can die in 1.5 minutes if after is bleeding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is what I'm saying exactly. It can be this kind of situation. And very often when we have attacks, when we have injured people, almost never we have ambulance around.
Yeah.
They arrive only after a few minutes later.
Yeah.
But for many people, I think in these 3.5 years was too late.
Yeah.
Because first people who are next to them, neighbors, relatives. Yeah, this is why it's so important to have these basic skills and basic knowledges how to provide first aid.
Yeah. And we give them these skills, and it gives them the opportunity to take leadership in that moment. And instead of standing there helplessly and watching someone die, they can say, no, I'm going to do something. I'm going to change this situation. And then they can be the hands of hope in that situation that saves a life. And I have to thank God. There, almost every single trip that I've taken, I've had stories like that where within a week or two of us training somebody, a bomb hits somewhere, or a drone or artillery or something like that, and they happen to be right there, and they're able to save that life.
Even this training gave me motivation always to carry with me a first aid kit. Because for before, yes, I know it's important. Yes, I know I should have it. But now I realized more how it can be important for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it moves me to the practical steps. Okay, I should have it always in my car at least, or as the same for our team to provide this first aid kit, just to have it always with us, just to be ready, then later not to regret.
Yeah.
Then it's better to have it and not never use it, or when you need to use it and you don't have it.
Yes.
For the trainings that we had here in Five Freedom Center, we invited people that we already work with. It can be displaced families, it can be parents for children with special needs, or families who lost their house. That somehow we already knew them. And because we do trauma healing trainings, we organize program for children with special needs. We work with the widows, and we rebuild houses for those families who lost them. But as well, for this training came new people, specifically for this training. But then you are doing this and this and this. And we already have few people, they really have interest, they want to be volunteers with us for children with special needs. People can get these knowledges, but as well they can be involved in different type of work. But as well, maybe they can use these skills as well there. So it's something more that you even think. That for you, maybe it's only provided trainings. But for us, what I see in our experience, it's not about only they got the skills, but they got even more chances where they can be involved. So thank you so much for giving this opportunity for us as well as the partners to develop the work that we do.
It really excites me to hear that, because that's actually something that that for me personally, and also for the doc, is just an important thing. Like we realize like where our focus is kind of coming in for a shorter period of time at the during crisis and trying to impact things, but we realize there's the people that are there long term, and our goal is always to come alongside those people to do what we can to help them. And our hope is that through our work, we're opening doors and giving opportunities to them. We try to work alongside, local community leaders and local churches, and we work with chaplains here in Ukraine, to kind of supplement what they're doing, so that hopefully it makes what they're doing more effective. We try to avoid what's unfortunately what I've seen. I was involved in development work for years, which is usually more long-term projects, and I've seen that sometimes when you get short-term things coming in, it can be very destructive. Maybe they think they're coming to help, but as a colleague of mine put it, sometimes a bunch of Americans show up and it's like they're a bomb made of money that just goes boom and then just causes all this damage. And it's our goal to try to avoid things like that, but instead to do things in a way that's strategically supporting the long-term work that's already going on or that's getting started, and to leave things in a healthier place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important, from my side, my experience, to come in slowly and come in as a learner, and to not come in thinking that you're superior in any way, but to realize that Ukrainians, like if we're talking just about the context here in Ukraine, there's a lot that Ukrainians are already doing. Ukrainians are very capable people. I mean, you're a great example. There's so much that Ukrainians are doing to care for each other, to care for their country, to try to deal with this crisis.
I think maybe when they come here, they need to understand that their experience and their context where they came from maybe will not work everything here. Maybe just to keep in their mind that we have our context, and maybe to be aware to the people that they work with. Because it's one thing, as we already discussed, it's one thing just to come from peaceful country where is normal life and just to come for 1 week. And maybe they have the expectations, but they see a little bit different picture. Maybe just to be more aware, to understand if people live here already 4 years, and for them this is not just movie. This is daily life. And maybe just to be aware, because behind of each person in Ukraine, there is a unique story. And you never know what this person went through.
Thank you for watching the Fight for Freedom podcast. If this conversation encouraged you, like, share, and subscribe to help more people hear these stories. And we invite you to be part of the work happening in Ukraine. Consider supporting through a donation.